Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Yinz Brewin.
Yinz Brewin.
Yinz Brewin. My name is Adam, and I'm one of your hosts. With me, as always, is Steve.
It's episode 1. How is it as always? You can't just do that on the very first episode.
That means we got to keep the streak alive, which means you're going to have to be back for episode 2 as well.
I'm Mr. All Days Off, though.
That is true. That is very true. So welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of Yinz Brewin. What we are here to talk about today is something very, very important. Beer.
Yeah.
It is the lifeblood of society.
I mean, it's been around for thousands of years.
And I'd say we keep it going.
All right, then.
So, specifically, we want to bring it a little more local. What we want to talk about is beer in the community, here and around Pittsburgh, here in Moon Township, and around just western PA. So we are here to bring that information to you on this show.
We also really want to focus on the home brewers and give them a chance to come on this show and showcase everything that they have to offer. We hear a lot in the Pittsburgh area about all the new craft breweries that are popping up, but we don't hear enough about what's going on in the basements and garages all across our fine city.
That's very true. It's almost like a grunge movement.
Yeah.
Like back in the early, even the flannel. Even the flannel is appropriate. So one of the things that we need to talk about is the beer, and specifically the beer that we have in front of us. The reason that we need to talk about this is our own home brew. This is beer that we have brewed ourselves, so we do have a little bit of experience in this arena. We're just not a couple of good-looking fellas on TV. We actually do know a little bit about what we're doing. The beer I have here in front of me is one that I have brewed. This is a basic cream ale. This is a very light-bodied beer. As you can see, it's a bit effervescent. We've poured it a little bit earlier, and it's still bubbling along. This is one of my favorite beers that I've had. Steve is sipping on something that I don't even want to explain because it's his beer, and I don't want to take that away from him.
So what I have here is something even more complex than what you just described. While you're very simple, you have very good simple sensibilities about yourself.
You are the exact opposite.
This is not simple in any means at all. What this is a raspberry blueberry Carolina Reaper stout. For lack of a better term, you have to take all of those terms.
You get the sweet and the heat.
Yes. It presents itself very quickly with a fruits up front, and then it comes with the Carolina Reaper burn on the back end. But even though a lot of people think stouts are heavy beers, this falls into that 4.5% ABV and is very much like a Guinness in how thin it is and how easy drinking it is.
It is.
Despite the heat.
I've had it myself, and it is something that is a bit of a surprise, even, or especially if it is something that you don't tell the person that's drinking it that there is a Carolina Reaper back end on it. That's always a fun exercise, and we've done that once or twice to people.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we should explain a little bit further. What is a Carolina Reaper?
Oh, what is a Carolina Reaper?
What is a Carolina Reaper?
Well, up until a couple years ago, it was the hottest pepper that you could ever buy.
So this is pure spice.
Yeah, it comes in, if you know anything about the Scoville unit scale, which is how the spiciness of peppers is measured, the Carolina Reaper comes in at about 2 million Scovilles, whereas, habanero will only be about 100,000. So that might give you some sort of an idea of how hot this is. And like I said, it's actually not even the hottest pepper anymore. So I'm always looking for ways to improve this recipe.
So bottom line, this beer is a jerk.
Yeah.
So speaking of, what do you say?
Cheers to the first episode
Here.
of Yinz Brewin.
Can I just say that we make fantastic beers?
Yeah, we do.
Yes. So one of the things that we had mentioned earlier is that we do know what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that we're completely experts. We are a couple of home brewers, but we are by no means the end-all, be-all. And one of the ways that we want to exemplify that is have people on this show that actually do know what they're talking about above and beyond what we know. So one of the things that we would like to do is have people from the community come in and talk about their beers and their beer experiences. That's something we'll get into a little bit later on the show.
Yeah, we definitely want people who can teach us a thing or two. As Adam already said, we are not experts at this. Well, we are just a couple of guys who have a hobby and we enjoy it. So I think with that, we can maybe start looking at what's going to be coming up on the show. And what's going to be coming up on the show is we're going to have a friend that we've met through a community beer tasting group, and he is going to be sharing with us a white stout that is also a coffee beer. And with that, I think we're going to get right into that now.
Sounds good to me.
So welcome back to Yinz Brewing, and this is our very first episode, and that means we have to have a very first guest. And right now we're going to bring on a friend that we've already mentioned, and his name is Tom Wagner.
Thank you.
He has brewed an amazing coffee white stout. But I can't sing the praises as well as he can, so I'm just going to turn it over to him. Please tell us about this beer.
So this beer was the first go-around, first attempt with this one, and normally this time of year I do a chocolate habanero smoked porter.
Ooh.
I've been doing that for a number of years now, and I decided this year to get out of my comfort zone and challenge myself a little bit. And I happened to come across an idea while researching online about golden stouts, or white stouts, as they're also well known. So this one here, it was challenging in that you attempt to make a stout, which we know stouts are dark jet black in color for the most part, but I wanted to make something tasted like a stout but looked like a light lager. And so a lot of the ingredients in the grains that go into making a stout impart those dark colors, so and also relate to the taste of those beers. So it was very challenging to concoct a beer that tasted like a stout without using some of the ingredients that impart those colors to a stout. So it really fell on to, throwing in ingredients into the beer that would give that stout-like flavor, the dark chocolate malts, the roastiness, and the flavors that come through in a stout but don't impart a lot of color. So I spent a lot of time researching, what kinds of things I could throw in that will impart that flavor but not deter from, a light lager color too much.
Can you give us any specific ingredients that you may have switched out, whereas in normal stouts you would find a lot of chocolate malt?
Yeah.
And that's usually where you get a lot of the dark color from. So what was that kind of replacement?
So what I ended up going with was a base 2-row grain, and then I added a little bit of Pilsner malt to add a little bit more, backbone to the malt flavor, but not impart a whole lot of color. Now, typically, the chocolate malts that are really, known for generating a stout-like beer, I had to strip that away completely. So there's no chocolate malt in here whatsoever, just a base 2-row grain, Pilsner malt. And then for the additions to really impart the stout-like flavors is I threw in some cocoa nibs, vanilla beans, and then some whole coffee beans on top of that in the fermenter after soaking them in a bourbon whiskey mixture to sanitize them.
Ooh. And did you use any of that bourbon in as part of an extract in a way, or?
No, it's basically sanitize all the ingredients, but the bourbon went into the beer.
Fair enough.
On top.
So one of the questions that beer drinkers always ask, there's always numbers involved. The ABV, which is the alcohol by volume, that essentially establishes how much alcohol is in a beer. What was the ABV? And the other number that we always ask about is the IBU, which is the International Bitterness Unit. What that essentially is supposed to tell you is how bitter the beer is. So any idea on what the ABV or the IBUs are on this beer?
Yeah, so the ABV, I estimate somewhere around 7%. It's a little tricky sometimes when you're throwing in other fermentables or alcohol that you've soaked, the other ingredients in on top. They're very, very small amounts, so I don't think I'm too far off in my calculation. So 7% ABV and about 22 IBUs, so low on the bitterness.
Yeah, and again, we're first episode here, so we'll get a little more into this, but stouts are typically very low in IBUs because they're usually taking advantage of hops that aren't high on alpha acids, which is what imparts the IBUs into a beer. So can you give us an idea of the kind of hops that you use? I'm sure they were very low alpha. I'm going to let me guess, actually. I'm going to guess UK Kent Golding.
That's what I was going to go with.
And then, Adam, why don't you guess your favorite?
See, my favorite, and there's no doubt about it, it's the Fuggle hop. And I'm wondering if the Fuggle was involved in this one.
No, the Kent was. I'm sorry.
One for me.
Well played. Well played.
Yeah, there's also different ways to get the low bitterness. You can use a hop high in alpha acid, but boil times are a lot lower.
Right.
So you just get a little bit of the bitterness, or you can, use a low alpha acid but boil longer and get the, same amount. So you can get flavors from hops that you like in beers that normally wouldn't use those hops, just detract, your boil time additions.
It's all in the recipe and how you use it.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I mean, we've had this sitting in front of us for way too long.
Oh, yeah.
I've been drinking it.
Oh, you have? Cheers. Here's to you. Here's
Cheers to a good beer, Tom. Yeah, it can't be stated enough. For the audience at home, I'm sorry you can't taste this at the moment, but this has such a rich coffee flavor in it. I love coffee beers in general.
And not only on the taste, but also on the nose.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that that's what it greets you with,
Yeah.
is that big coffee smell, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was. I'm not a coffee person per se, but it was a way for me to impart, kind of those stout-like flavors without much color. I was very overzealous with the coffee because it smelled so good. I love the smell of coffee. I'm just not a coffee drinker, and so I think I'll dial the amount of whole coffee beans in the fermenter back next time and lighten up the color a little bit. But I'm pretty pleased with how it came out the first time.
Very cool. So let's move on a little bit then, and let's learn a little bit more about you and your history as a brewer. I just want to start, you already mentioned that you had a habanero chocolate porter that you usually do. And I think that it speaks to the general home brewer sense of experimentation and adventure. You're going to find that in a lot of garages. We already talked about that. I brewed one with the Carolina Reaper. Adam has done some weird stuff himself. But do you have any other beers and recipes that stick out to you as just like they're kind of wow? They have a wow factor to them.
Yeah, I've been gravitating more towards the New England hazy style IPAs. So not like your traditional West Coast bitter, heavily hopped, and crystal clear, IPAs. These are more the kind of like the East Coast tradition, very, very aggressive on the hops, even more, but low on the bitterness side, and very, very, cloudy, hazy, very juicy, a lot of tropical citrusy notes as opposed to some of the American West Coast varieties. So I've been getting into those quite a bit more. And then and some other stuff that I've been researching and intrigued me are ingredients for beers that can alter the color. They're based on their pH of the beer. So you can make green beers, blue beers, purple beers without detracting from the flavor of the beer, but the visual perception is different.
And is that without like putting in any kind of just extra chemicals or going to a Walmart and buying an Easter egg dye?
No, there's certain kinds of berries, plants, tea mixtures, which you can concoct that will allow you to impart different colors to a beer without altering the flavor and aren't going to come across as, chemically.
So is there anything that drives you to try a different recipe, or is there something else that says, I need to try this, or I can't try this, or what makes you decide to try a different style or something new?
It either comes down to availability of ingredients at the time. There's certain ingredients that are challenging different times of the year to try and procure. Other stuff, it would have to be, I would say, my mood seasonally, from summer to spring, fall. Different times of year, I brew different beers. Like obviously I gravitate toward darker beers, heavier, malt flavors during the winter times to help keep me warm in these Pittsburgh winters we have here.
I think we all can agree to that.
And then some of the others are just, challenge. I find, a certain beer style or recipe challenging, and I step out of my comfort zone, like I said earlier, and try and go after that.
So speaking of stepping out of your comfort zone, how did you get started? What was the driving force to say, I want to make my own beer?
So the driving force was I finished grad school. I had moved out here from Oregon, from the West Coast, where I was in beer heaven at the time. A college student with a wealth of craft venues at really, really good prices. So at the time, there was no need for me to brew my own beer. I just went out into the world and expanded my palate. When I moved here, it was there was a lot of the drive-through beer distributors. You didn't have the laws overturned where if you had an eatery or a restaurant establishment that you could then serve beer out of. So it was pretty much buy it by the case, and you're stuck with what you got, and the prices were quite high. So coming out of school, I had a job, so I had income at the time. I had a palate for beer and what I liked, and I wanted to buy what I liked, just not in the volumes that were being given to me. So I crunched the numbers and realized, hey, I can make beer for a lot cheaper than it would be to buy it, going out. So that's what I sold my wife on at the time, was I was going to save money. Lo and behold, I haven't quite achieved the save money part, but I am very, very pleased with the product that I can make and enjoy it and then comfort my own home.
Well, I must say, you were not the only one, because this beer is fantastic.
Thank
and
you.
I know that we've had a couple others of your recipes and your beers, and there hasn't been a bad one in the bunch yet.
Yep, likewise. Your
yeah.
beers are good too.
Oh, thank
you.
Yep.
Just the point that you just made, that you sold your wife on it being a cost-effective decision, I think that's something general that the general audience should know, though. We found that you can produce about 2 cases of beer for around $50, and I think that's pretty comparable if you're looking at other cases of beer you can buy. If you can make something that's your own, then that's something that you can enjoy because it's yours.
Yep.
It's like eating a good home-cooked meal.
You can't buy pride.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, and when you break it down, there's like normally you'd go to a bar and it'd be like what, $5 to $8 or $9,
Yeah.
depending on the brewery and how much time they spent putting in to make the product. Whereas this here is probably 75 cents for one of these glasses, home brewed.
Yeah. So another question I have for you, we've kind of gone through your history. Do you have any stories that you can impart to us that are a bit of any nightmare stories or any mishaps? I mean, I think every home brewer has some of those in their closet of accidents.
Yeah, I haven't had, some of the more traditional accidents with, carrying a glass carboy and it busting apart or dropping. No, most of my accidents have been not paying attention or had a few too many beers while I was brewing, which I know some of us have. And, you're not paying attention, you get a boil over or you spill or you realize you forgot an ingredient. Just general stuff. I haven't had any nightmares yet, knock on wood.
Knock on wood. That's always good.
So admittedly, you talked about you've had issues where you've missed ingredients. I've actually had that, a bit of a personal story. On one of the beers that I was brewing, I completely forgot to add a hop during the boil. And that was actually a blessing in disguise. It actually turned out better than I anticipated. And I 100% say that it was because I missed that hop addition. So it's interesting, whenever you're brewing, whenever you're creating, sometimes you have happy little mistakes. And that's the joy of it, because if it's something different, you can replicate it again, as long as you remember what it was that you forgot to do.
Yep.
And that's the nice thing about home brewing, is you can experiment, you can try this, and if, in all honesty, you can't screw it up. It just might not be what you intended it to be.
Yep. But
Happy little mistake. Are you the Bob Ross of brewing?
I don't have enough hair for that yet.
So I take it you've got you redesigned your recipe, and that's what
That's
how
what the
you brew it
recipe
now.
is now. That is correct. Yep.
That's how it goes down in the books. That's how it goes down in the
I
Brewer's
write the
Helper.
history.
So Tom, can you tell us any more about what was your favorite beer that you've brewed, and maybe do you have a least favorite, a recipe that you're not going to repeat?
Yeah, so my favorite beer was my first go around with a New England hazy style IPA, and it was, so I put in a lot of hops. There's some new hops out there, the cryo hops, so it's kind of like a hop where they've separated the materials that impart, the aromas, the aromatics into a beer that are traditional to IPAs. They've separated the green leafy biomass from the material that provides those aromas and concentrated it down in a way that you can really, really hop up these beers like they're like IPAs on steroids almost, if you will.
Isn't that also known as lupulin?
Yep.
Or okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the lupulin powder, that yellow powder inside
Right.
of the hop. They found a way to concentrate it in a chemically inert atmosphere, so they don't allow oxygen, because oxygen is detrimental to the aromatics in that. So I was able to get some of that and throw it in a beer, and I also put in orange zest, a lot of orange zest into the beer, pineapple. So I make my own juice at home, and I figure, if I'm making a beer that's very, very aromatic in citrus style hops, why not add, actual juice to the beer? And since it's going to be cloudy anyway, then it shouldn't matter. But it was definitely my favorite beer, yeah, by far. As far as my beer that I've attempted, but I'm still, standoffish from the style is brown ales. Brown ales are very, very tricky to get right, and I've made one once before, but I've had very inconsistent, brews with those. So it's probably one that, standoffish for me.
Just not a style that you chase after.
Yeah.
I understand. I think you're kind of right. I think you're like on the right direction though with that New England IPA that you're speaking about and putting actual juice in it. There's one I can think of that from another brewery that they use actual orange juice to go into the New England IPA, and it's really good. It's really smooth. So I'm hoping yours will turn out the same way.
Well, I've got one in the works right now. It's going to be my submission this year to the National Homebrew Competition. It's an orange cream milkshake New England style IPA.
That sounds good.
Yeah, save some of that for us.
Certainly.
Even you, Mr. I don't like IPAs.
Hey, you know what? If he hasn't made a bad beer yet,
That's true.
the streak has got to stay alive.
right,
Well, that's the challenge. Convert the non-believers.
That's right. Challenge accepted.
All right.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks a lot. That's a lot of information you gave us there, Tom. I'm glad that you're able to impart all that to us. I'm glad you're able to bring your beer along. I think now we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come back and challenge your knowledge of how much you know about beer brewing equipment.
Well, I think I'm fumbling through just as much as anyone else.
Welcome back, and gentlemen, I have a very, very important question. Steve, Tom, Yinz Brewin?
Not currently.
That's right. We got one more step before we can get back into our brewing. It is time to test your guys' knowledge on home brewing, and not only that, home brewing equipment. So we're going to have ourselves a little bit of a showdown. Steve v. Tom.
Okay.
So what we need to do, it's a very, very simple game. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal an item. The first person to buzz in has to explain what the item is and how it is used in the home brewing process.
Okie doke.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, before we get there, I do need you guys to test your buzzers. So, Steve, I'm going to have to ask you to test your buzzer.
I understand we're a low budget show.
We are.
But really, harmonicas from the dollar store?
Harmonicas from the dollar store. They may or may not have been on sale.
All right.
More challenging than you thought.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Seriously?
Yeah,
Was.
seriously.
Well then.
No noise.
Tom. All right, we got 1 out of 2 working.
I got a Broco.
I win.
Hold on. Reset the prop. Give me a second. I'll get it.
I think this is going to be shoe-in for me.
I know, yeah.
I'm good.
Thank you. All right, very good. Now, we're going to go through a bit of a test round.
Right.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal the first item that is necessary for beer and home brewing. First person to buzz in has to explain what it is and why it is important to home brewing. So the first thing I am going to reveal is this. Steve, I got to go with you on that one.
This would be a growler, and it is used for transporting and keeping and serving beer after it's been fermented.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Very good. All right.
No
And
points on that one, but I got
No
it.
points. So, but you know what you're doing, and that's important.
Neat.
Tom, any questions before we begin?
Nope, I'm
All
good.
right. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this out of the way.
Goodbye, beer.
Bye, beer. So, Steve, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Tom, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Please don't smash your glass.
The first item is... Tom.
All right, you have a hydrometer inside of a little beaker.
So what is a hydrometer, and what is a beaker, and why is it important?
So the beaker holds the beer that you are measuring the specific gravity of, which is what a hydrometer is for. And specific gravity relates to the sugar content within a beer. So typically after you make your wort is your essentially beer with all the sugar in it prior to the yeast consuming it, generating the alcohol and the various byproducts that come off. So you measure it then to measure the sugar content. That gives you your initial gravity reading or your original gravity reading. And then throughout the fermentation process, you continually measure it until you hit your final gravity reading, and basically what you're doing is you're measuring how much sugar the yeast has consumed toward the generation of alcohol. And then when you hit your final gravity reading, you know fermentation is complete and you're ready to bottle, keg, or otherwise drink it.
Steve, how do you feel about being replaced on the show?
I'm okay with that. I didn't buzz in because that's like a lot of information. I didn't want to do all that talking.
So really, was this laziness?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, let's break that streak. Let's see if we can get something going on round number 2. Gentlemen, are we ready?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Begin. Steve,
That there's a bottle capper, my man.
what does
a
it
bottle
do?
capper is used basically for a lot of home brewers. When you're finished fermenting your beer, you're going to put it into a vessel, and the very first starting vessel is going to be bottles. So you're going to use that to secure bottle caps on top of your bottles. It's very unlikely as a first stage home brewer that you're going to be kegging. We're still not kegging. We've been doing it for years.
Very good. 1 point apiece. This is a very tight game. It is time to up the ante a little bit.
Good.
Gentlemen, are you ready for round 3?
Yes.
Tom, are you ready?
I
One
think so.
means yes. The next item is. Ooh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I have to go to the judges on that one. The judges say it is to
Shrugging.
Steve.
Okay. Lots of shrugs, but what that is that's an attachment for cleaning. And you're going to put that onto the end of a power drill, and a lot of the times when you're fermenting, you're going to ferment inside of, oh man, I lost the name for that one.
Can I steal?
Oh yeah. Don't let them steal yet. You're going to be fermenting inside of a carboy, which is usually 5 to 6 gallons to hold your wort as it ferments in the beer. But after you pour it out, you're going to get a lot of schmutz and detritus all stuck to the sides of that carboy. What that's going to do is that's going to spin up and pull all that off the sides.
I think that's a winning answer.
I concur.
All right. That is 2-1. Tom, you got some catching up to do here. You came out of the gate strong with that
I
first
need some more
answer.
beer.
We can easily take care of that.
Put it away.
So, gentlemen, are we ready for round number 4?
Yes.
Round number 4 and go. Tom,
Oh, come on, Steve. You weren't even
I-
trying.
were you even paying attention?
Hold on, my brain thought about it for a second, but I don't have the actual name, so I can't.
Oh, going back. It's a keg or carboy washer.
Steve, I'm going to let you steal on this one.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
Is it just for drainage?
He's closer than you are.
Oh,
Yes, it is not necessarily just for cleaning, but it's also for drying, specifically for drying.
I almost
Right.
called it a racking system, but that's incorrect.
That is completely
That's-
incorrect, and I'm glad you didn't do
Yeah.
that. We don't want to embarrass ourselves on the first
good
show.
job, Steve.
Unfortunately, Tom cannot win because now it's 3-1.
Who says we're only going to 5?
When I wrote the outline of the game, I thought,
So it is 3-1. It is time for round number 5. Gentlemen, are we ready?
yeah.
Tom, you got some catching up to do here.
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I feel like Adam might just start pulling out things that aren't.
that's right. Gentlemen,
I was drinking. You didn't ask if I was ready.
I'll
you
take
take
what I can
advantage.
get.
And he's the guest. So, Tom,
That is a wort chiller. So when you are done boiling your beer or your wort, what you do is you want to chill it down very quickly so you can get a protein break. What it allows it to do is all the proteins and sediment and husks that may be in your wort, it allows them to flocculate and settle out so you can separate the wort off of that into your fermenter and you can ferment from there. And typically you're boiling and you want to chill it down to yeast pitching temperature, which depending on if you're making a lager or an ale can be different temperatures.
he's catching up.
Yeah, I know. You got that one.
We have one more round,
Okay.
the bonus round.
bonus round.
So this is actually one of the most important things for a brewing day. Tom, are you ready?
Yes.
Steve, are you ready?
Mhm.
Tom,
This is a bottle full of beer that is capped off and ready to drink.
that is correct. And why is it important to a brewing day?
It's important to a brewing day because you get to enjoy the pride of your work and the beer that you've made.
Fantastic. You can't argue with that.
And this is the point where if we had the rights to the song, I'd probably play the Circle of Life.
I like it. I like it. Unfortunately, we do not. So what we're going to have to do is end this in a tie.
Okay.
So, Steve, thank you for playing. Tom, thank you for playing.
Well, even though we're ending this in a tie, I think it's only appropriate that we do give Tom an award.
Yes.
Tom,
All right.
your award of great job. You ended in a tie. For,
All right. I'll
for the
take
first
anything
quiz
I can
on
get.
Yinz Brewing.
And we can never take that away from him.
No.
No, you cannot.
It's yours to keep for now.
What about the buzzer too? Or I got to give that back?
No,
No, you can- you
definitely
can keep
keep the
that,
buzzer. Nobody wants to use
We have
somebody
enough
else's
budget
buzzer.
to send
I
those
still
away.
had to ask.
In fact, I gotta put my name on this one and throw out the other one.
Yes.
We'll just wash it in some alcohol.
So with that, Steve, do you have any parting words from episode 1?
No, I don't have any parting words. I just hope everybody enjoyed what we presented here tonight. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something. We definitely presented a lot to learn about. I would like to invite everybody to start pursuing the world of homebrewing.
Agreed. Tom, thank you very much for being on episode 1.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
So, as of now, you are the best guest we have ever had on the show, and we thank you for that.
A number one.
A number 1, that's right. For Steve and I would like to thank everybody for joining in. If you have any questions or comments, get a hold of us somehow. I assume we're going to have some sort of something on the backside.
Yeah, we'll have all kinds of websites and stuff in the credits that you can read.
Okay, all right. So with that, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Yinz Brewin.
Hey, Yinz guys, Brewin.